Why did you just get annoyed at that text message? Or fall for that person? Or freeze up during a test? Psychologists have been arguing about the answer for over a century, and they never fully agreed. Instead, they built separate schools of thought, each with its own lens on the mind, its own famous names, and its own idea of what fixes a troubled person. Let's walk through the big paradigms in roughly the order they showed up, and see how each one answers the same question differently. Psychoanalysis started with Sigmund Freud in Vienna, and it argues that most of what drives you is hidden from you, buried in your unconscious mind. Freud split the personality into the id, your raw animal wants, the superego, your inner moral scold, and the ego, the referee stuck negotiating between them. He believed unresolved conflicts from early childhood, especially around parents, get repressed and quietly steer your adult choices, relationships, and anxieties. That is why classic psychoanalysis involves lying on a couch, free associating, or describing dreams and slips of the tongue, so the therapist can dig up buried material. Critics say a lot of this is unfalsifiable and hard to test scientifically. But Freud's fingerprints are still everywhere, from Freudian slip to the whole idea that therapy means talking about your childhood. Behaviorism showed up as a rebellion against Freud, arguing that psychology should only study what you can actually see and measure, not invisible unconscious stuff. John Watson kicked it off, and B.F. Skinner made it famous with his experiments on rats and pigeons in boxes, showing that behavior is shaped by rewards and punishments rather than by inner thoughts or feelings. This is the school of classical conditioning, like Pavlov's dog salivating at a bell, and operant conditioning, like a rat learning to press a lever for a food pellet. To a strict behaviorist, you are basically a product of your reinforcement history, praised for good grades so you study more, punished for touching a hot stove so you stop. This thinking is exactly why parents use sticker charts, why casinos use unpredictable payouts to keep you pulling the slot machine, and why dog training still works the same way today. It fell out of favor for ignoring thoughts entirely, but its tools for shaping habits never really left psychology. Gestalt Psychology grew out of Germany in the early 1900s, with Max Wertheimer, Kurt Kafka, and Wolfgang Kohler as its main founders. And its big slogan is that the whole is more than the sum of its parts. They noticed that your brain does not process the world as separate little dots and lines. It automatically organizes raw sensory information into meaningful wholes, shapes, patterns, faces. That is why you see a triangle made of 3 separate curved lines, or why a flipbook of still images looks like smooth motion, a phenomenon called the phi effect that actually inspired Wertheimer's original insight. Gestalt psychologists mapped out rules for this pattern making, like grouping things that are close together or that look similar, which is basically the foundation of modern graphic design and user interfaces. This school did not last as a dominant force on its own, but its ideas about perception got absorbed straight into cognitive psychology and art theory. Humanistic psychology arrived in the mid-1900s as a pushback against both Freud's dark unconscious drives and Skinner's rats-in-a-box mechanics, insisting that people are not just wounded patients or trained animals, but free, growth-seeking beings. Abraham Maslow is famous for his hierarchy of needs, that pyramid showing you need food, safety, and belonging met before you can chase bigger goals like self-esteem and ultimately self-actualization, becoming the fullest version of yourself. Carl Rogers built on this with client-centered therapy, arguing that people heal best in a relationship with unconditional positive regard, meaning the therapist accepts you without judgment while you find your own answers. This school treats you as the expert on your own life, trusting your inner drive toward growth, rather than assuming you are broken or just a bundle of habits. It is the intellectual ancestor of a lot of modern self-help language, like finding your true self or reaching your full potential. Critics say it can be a bit vague and hard to test scientifically, but its optimistic, person-centered spirit shaped how most therapists actually talk to clients today. Cognitive psychology exploded in the 1950s and 60s in what is literally called the cognitive revolution, when psychologists got tired of behaviorism ignoring the mind and decided to crack open the mental black box after all. This school treats your brain like a computer, taking in information, storing it, retrieving it, and using it to make decisions. So cognitive psychologists study memory, attention, language, and problem-solving directly. Jean Piaget is a huge figure here for mapping out how children's thinking develops in stages, learning object permanence as babies, and abstract logic later as teenagers. Cognitive psychology also gave us useful concepts like cognitive biases, those predictable glitches in judgment, and schemas, the mental shortcuts you use to interpret new situations based on past experience. This is the direct ancestor of cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, probably the most widely used therapy today, which works by helping people notice and change distorted thought patterns rather than digging into childhood or just rewarding behavior. In short, cognitive psychology says you act the way you do because of how you process, interpret, and sometimes misinterpret information. Biological psychology, sometimes called neuroscience or biopsychology, argues that if you really want to know why you think and feel a certain way, you should look inside the physical brain and body, rather than at hidden dreams or learned habits. This school studies neurons, neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, hormones, genetics, and brain structures, using tools like fMRI and EEG scans to literally watch the brain light up during different tasks or emotions. It explains depression partly through neurotransmitter imbalances, explains why identical twins raised apart can still have startlingly similar personalities due to shared genetics, and explains why damage to a specific brain region, like the famous case of Phineas Gage, can transform someone's whole personality. This is the foundation for psychiatric medication, since drugs like antidepressants work by adjusting brain chemistry rather than talking through childhood memories. Biological psychology does not deny that environment and experience matter, but it insists your hardware, your actual physical brain, sets real limits and tendencies on everything you feel and do. It has become massively influential thanks to modern brain imaging technology, letting scientists finally watch the living brain at work. Evolutionary psychology asks a very different question. Not what happened in your childhood or what is your brain chemistry, but what problem did this behavior solve for our ancestors trying to survive and reproduce on the African savanna? This school argues that many of our mental tendencies are inherited instincts shaped by natural selection over millions of years, not blank slates written by culture alone. It explains why humans across virtually every culture fear snakes and spiders more than statistically more dangerous things like cars. Because ancestors who feared venomous creatures survived to pass on their genes. It explains cravings for sugar and fat as leftovers from a world of scarce calories. And it explains jealousy, parental protectiveness, and even some mate preference patterns as instincts that once boosted survival and reproduction odds. Evolutionary psychologists are careful to say instinct is not destiny. Culture and learning still shape how these tendencies actually get expressed. But the underlying wiring came from deep evolutionary history. It is a controversial school because some of its specific claims about, say, dating preferences are hard to test and easy to overstate. But the core idea that evolution shaped the mind, not just the body, is now widely accepted. Sociocultural psychology zooms out from the individual brain entirely and argues that a huge amount of how you think and act comes from the culture, society, and specific people around you. Lev Vygotsky showed that children's thinking develops through social interaction and language, learning skills first with help from others before doing them independently. While Albert Bandura's social learning theory demonstrated that people pick up behaviors just by observing and imitating others, famously shown in his Bobo doll experiments, where kids copied adults hitting an inflatable doll. This school explains why people from different cultures can have strikingly different ideas about things like personal space, individualism versus collectivism, or even what counts as a mental illness. Because psychology is never happening in a vacuum. It is happening inside a specific social world. It is also behind concepts like peer pressure, conformity, and groupthink, showing how much your private thoughts bend to match the people around you, as demonstrated in classic studies like Solomon Asch's line experiments. In short, this school says do not just look at the individual, look at their family, their community, and their whole cultural context to understand why they act the way they do. So, the same person walking into a therapist's office could be described as fighting unconscious childhood conflicts, running on learned reward patterns, seeking self-actualization, misfiring cognitive biases, wrestling brain chemistry, following ancient instincts, or simply reflecting the culture they grew up in. None of these schools is fully wrong. They are more like different colored lenses stacked on top of the same messy, fascinating human mind. If this helped the whole field finally click for you, subscribe for more Every X Explained deep dives.